Jack's world crumbles when he overhears his wife plotting to manipulate him like a pawn. But he's no one's puppet. With quiet resolve, he flips the script, exposing her game in front of their community. Will his bold stand for respect cost him everything, or set him free? Hit like, subscribe for more raw stories, and share your thoughts below. Jack Torres gripped the knife, slicing bell peppers with steady hands in his Coconut Grove kitchen. The sizzle of olive oil in the pan mingled with the hum of Miami's evening traffic outside. At 35, he was the guy everyone leaned on. First to help a neighbor jumpstart a car, last to leave the auto shop where he wrenched engines back to life. His 5-year marriage to Sophia, a marketing exec with a knack for closing deals, had once felt like a partnership. Now, it was a ledger he didn't recognize. Max, their labradoodle, pawed at the back door, eager for his evening run. Jack let him out, the screen door creaking shut as he returned to the cutting board. Sophia sat at the counter, her phone casting a blue glow across her fingers. She'd been distant for weeks, dodging his attempts at closeness with excuses thinner than the onions he chopped. "Work's brutal," she'd say, or, "I just need to unwind." Tonight, her thumbs danced over the screen, a faint smile curling as she typed. Jack's phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Nate, his buddy at the shop. "You good? Looked off today." Jack started to reply when Sophia's phone crackled to life on speaker. Her friend Kira's voice spilled into the room. "So you've got Jack trained yet? Like, does he jump when you snap?" Sophia laughed, a sharp sound that hit Jack like a misfired spark plug. "Getting there," she said, oblivious to his presence. "Give him a little praise when he does my errands, and he's all in. Like teaching a dog to fetch." The knife froze mid-slice. Jack's pulse thudded in his ears. He stood still, the air heavy with the scent of peppers and betrayal. Sophia went on. "He thinks it's about respect, but it's just attention. I control the supply, he stays hooked." Kira chuckled. "You're ruthless, Soph." "Strategic," Sophia corrected. "He'll run my sister's birthday errands tomorrow because I'll toss him a smile. Works every time." Jack set the knife down, deliberate, quiet. His chest tightened, not with anger but with clarity. The woman he'd built a life with saw him as a pawn in her game. No discussion, no partnership, just a system she'd engineered to keep him in line. He grabbed his phone, stepped to the porch where Max nosed the grass, and texted Nate. "House is a lie. Need to think." Nate's reply came fast. "Swing by the shop tomorrow. We'll talk." Jack pocketed the phone and stared at the darkening sky. Sophia's voice drifted through the open window, now chatting about her sister's party. He could walk back in, confront her, watch her scramble to explain. But that would give her the stage. Instead, he decided, no more playing her game. Tomorrow, her endless lists, dry cleaning, car noises, RSVPs, would stay untouched. He wasn't her errand boy. He was done. Back inside, Sophia glanced up. "Dinner soon?" she asked, eyes still on her screen. "When it's ready," Jack said, voice flat. He turned to the stove, stirring the pan. The act felt final, like locking a toolbox after a long day. Sophia didn't notice the shift, but Jack did. For the first time in months, he saw the board clearly, and he wasn't moving her pieces anymore. Jack Torres woke to the hum of his alarm at 5:45 a.m., the Miami dawn barely breaking over Coconut Grove. He slipped out of bed, leaving Sophia asleep, her phone still clutched like a lifeline. Max, the labradoodle, thumped his tail as Jack grabbed his keys and headed to the auto shop. The sting of Sophia's words from last night, her casual plan to train him, burned fresh, but Jack channeled it into focus. Today he'd rewrite the rules. At the shop, the air smelled of motor oil and metal. Jack slid under a pickup, wrench in hand, when Nate rolled over on his stool. "You look like you slept on a bed of bolts," Nate said, tossing him a torque wrench. Jack caught it, spinning it once. "Sophia's playing chess with my life," he said, tightening a lug nut. "Thinks I'm a piece she can move." Nate whistled low. "That's cold. What's your play?" "Stop moving," Jack said. "Her lists, her errands? Done." Nate nodded. "Set the line, brother. Hold it." Back home, Sophia was already at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee and scrolling her phone. She slid a sticky note toward him. "Pick up my dry cleaning. Fix my car's squeak. RSVP for my sister's birthday." Jack glanced at it, then poured his coffee and walked to the sink. "Not today," he said, rinsing his mug. Sophia's head snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means I'm not your assistant," Jack said, drying his hands. "Handle your own schedule." Her eyes narrowed. "You're being petty." "I'm being clear," he replied, grabbing his jacket. "You want a chore boy? Hire one." The shop became Jack's sanctuary. He rebuilt a carburetor, bantered with a customer about classic Mustangs, and ignored Sophia's mid-morning text. Dry cleaning's on your way. Just do it. He left it unanswered, the phone face down on his workbench. By afternoon, Sophia's tone shifted. Another text. Can we talk? I'll make dinner. Your favorite. Jack read it, skeptical. A peace offering, or another move in her game. That evening, Sophia greeted him with a spread, grilled steak, plantains, a cold beer. The kitchen smelled like effort, but Jack stayed guarded. This doesn't change last night, he said, cutting into the meat. I heard you. I'm not a dog you train. Sophia set her fork down. I was joking with Kira. You're blowing this up. You laughed about controlling me, Jack said, voice steady. That's not a joke. That's a plan. She leaned forward, softening. I'm stressed, okay? Work's intense. I didn't mean it. Jack took a sip of beer, unmoved. Then stop acting like it. No more lists. No more games. The next day, Sophia tried again, cornering him before her sister's birthday dinner. You're coming, right? It's important. She held out a gift bag, expecting him to carry it. Jack took it, but set it on the counter. I'll show up, he said. But not because you snapped your fingers. At the dinner, Sophia's family chattered over Cuban food at a Coral Gables restaurant. Jack arrived late, gift in hand, and sat across from Sophia. She smiled, playing the doting wife, but her hand grazed his arm a beat too long, performative. When her sister asked about their plans, Sophia said, Oh, Jack's been so busy, but he always makes time for me. The table cooed. Jack's jaw tightened. He leaned in, voice low. Don't paint me as your prop. Sophia's smile faltered. Relax, it's just family. Exactly, Jack said. No lies in front of them. The rest of the night, Sophia kept her distance, but Jack felt the shift. Her charm was a tool, and he dulled its edge. Driving home, she stared out the window. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she muttered. No, Jack said, eyes on the road. You made it a game. I'm just done playing. The Coconut Grove neighborhood barbecue buzzed with energy, the air thick with the scent of grilling burgers and salsa music pulsing from a speaker. Jack Torres arrived at Mrs. Lopez's backyard with Max trotting beside him, the Labradoodle sniffing out kids tossing a frisbee. Jack had agreed to come, not for Sophia, but because Mrs. Lopez, with her knack for seeing through facades, deserved his respect. Sophia trailed behind, phone in hand, already scanning the crowd for allies. Tables lined the yard, piled with empanadas, coleslaw, and pitchers of mojitos. Neighbors mingled, their laughter cutting through the humid Miami evening. Jack grabbed a soda, nodding at Mark, Mrs. Lopez's son, who flipped patties at the grill with a cop's calm precision. Sophia, sensing the social stage, slipped into performance mode. She hugged Mrs. Lopez, her voice loud enough to carry. Jack's been such a trooper with my crazy schedule, she said, tossing him a smile that begged for applause. Jack set his drink down, his patience thinning. He'd warned her about using him as a prop. Before he could speak, Sophia raised a glass, her tone playful but pointed. To partners who keep up with us, even when we're a handful. The crowd chuckled, a few clinking glasses. Her words landed like a jab, framing Jack as the loyal sidekick who needed her guidance. He stepped forward, voice steady but clear, cutting through the chatter. No more stories, Sophia. Heads turned. Mrs. Lopez froze, her spatula hovering. You don't get to spin me as your project in public. We're done with that. Sophia's hand tightened on her glass. It's a joke, Jack. Lighten up. Not a joke, he said, eyes locked on hers. You've been playing me like a pawn for weeks. I heard your plan with Kira. I'm not your errand boy or your punchline. The yard went quiet, save for the hiss of the grill. Mark flipped a burger, his gaze flicking between them. Sophia laughed, sharp and forced. You're embarrassing us both. No, Jack said, turning to the crowd. I'm setting a boundary. From now on, we're separate, finances, schedules, expectations. Until you treat me as an equal, that's how it stays. Mrs. Lopez nodded, her eyes soft but approving. A neighbor coughed, another shuffled a plate. Sophia's cheeks flushed, her charm unraveling under the weight of eyes that saw her clearly now. You're serious? She hissed, stepping closer. Dead serious, Jack replied. I respect myself too much for your games. Mark cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Burgers are ready, he called, waving people to the grill. The crowd shifted, conversations restarting like engines after a stall. Jack grabbed a plate, handed Max a treat from his pocket, and sat at a table with Mrs. Lopez. Sophia hovered nearby, clutching her phone, her usual confidence replaced by a flicker of panic. You did right. Mrs. Lopez said quietly, passing him a roll. She needed to hear it. Jack nodded, biting into his burger. I needed to say it. Sophia approached, her voice low. We'll talk at home. No, Jack said, setting his plate down. We're talking now, or not at all. You choose. She hesitated, then walked away, joining a group of neighbors across the yard. Jack watched her go, feeling the weight of his decision settle. He wasn't just drawing a line, he was building a wall. And for the first time, he knew it would hold. Jack Torres hauled a crate of wrenches into a small storage unit just outside Coconut Grove, the metal clanging as he stacked it against the wall. The Miami sun beat down, but the weight of his decision from the barbecue felt lighter than the tools. After publicly calling out Sophia's manipulation, he'd moved out that night, crashing above Nate's garage in a spare room that smelled of motor oil and fresh paint. Max, his labradoodle, sprawled across the floor, unfazed by the change. Jack sat on a folding chair, typing on his laptop. He drafted a shared document, splitting their bills, electricity, water, internet, down to the cent. He canceled their joint gym membership, transferring his to a single plan, and texted Sophia the link with a note. Read this. We're separate now. Her reply came fast, a string of texts. You're overreacting. Come home. We can fix this. Jack ignored them, locking his phone. He wasn't negotiating with someone who saw respect as a bargaining chip. At the auto shop, Jack threw himself into work. He rebuilt a transmission, joking with a customer about vintage Corvettes, his hands steady despite the chaos of his personal life. Nate slid over on his stool during a break, cracking open a soda. You holding up? He asked, eyeing Jack's focused grip on a socket wrench. Better than I thought, Jack said, wiping grease from his fingers. No more jumping through her hoops. Nate grinned. That's the spirit. You're a free agent now. Jack's phone buzzed. Another message from Sophia. You're making this harder than it needs to be. He flipped it face down and tightened a bolt. She's still trying to call the shots, he told Nate. Not happening. Days later, Jack stopped by a hardware store in Coral Gables for sandpaper to refinish a workbench. A woman in the aisle, Elena, was comparing two types of grit, muttering about a dining table project. Go with 120 for a smooth finish, Jack offered, pointing at her selection. She raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. You a carpenter or just nosy? Mechanic, Jack said, smiling. But I know my way around wood. Elena smirked, tossing the 120 grit pack in her cart. All right, mechanic. Prove it. I need a second pair of hands this weekend. Jack agreed, intrigued by her directness. They met at her workshop, a rented space filled with sawdust and half-finished furniture. Together, they planed boards and clamped joints, her no-nonsense approach a stark contrast to Sophia's calculated charm. When Elena split the cost of lumber without a word, Jack felt a rare ease. No scorekeeping, just teamwork. Back at Nate's, Jack's evenings were quiet. He grilled chicken on a portable stove, Max begging for scraps, and scrolled through listings for a new place. Sophia's text slowed but didn't stop. We need to talk about the lease, she wrote one night. You can't just walk away. Jack replied, check the doc. I'm covering my half. You handle yours. He wasn't running. He was reorganizing his life on his terms. A week later, at the shop, Nate handed Jack a coffee. Heard from Mrs. Lopez, he said. Sophia's telling people you're having a midlife crisis. Jack laughed, short and sharp. Let her spin it. I'm not here to correct her story. That afternoon, Elena texted, tables done. Beer to celebrate? Jack met her at a dive bar near Key Biscayne, the ocean breeze cutting through the humidity. Over IPAs, she talked about her carpentry business, her eyes lighting up as she described a custom bookshelf job. Jack shared stories of tricky engine fixes, the conversation flowing without pretense. When she paid for the second round, she waved off his offer to split. Next one's on you, she said. No ledger needed. Driving back to Nate's, Jack felt the pieces of his life shifting into place. Sophia's control was fading, replaced by a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just surviving the fallout. He was building something new, one choice at a time. Jack Torres stood in the driveway of his new Key Biscayne bungalow, unloading a toolbox from his truck. The lease on the Coconut Grove house had ended, and Sophia had moved to a sleek downtown condo, her social polish tarnished by whispers from neighbors who'd witnessed Jack stand at the barbecue. Max, his labradoodle, bounded across the small yard, chasing a tennis ball Jack tossed. The two-bedroom home, with its garage ready for a workbench, felt like a fresh start, his start. Jack had finalized the split with surgical precision. He'd sent Sophia a notarized agreement covering his half of the remaining bills, delivered by a courier to avoid her theatrics. Her last text arrived days ago, a photo of their old fridge, a lake cabin booking still pinned under a magnet. "We could have had this," she wrote. Jack typed back, "Respect outweighs vacations." He blocked her number, severing the final thread of her influence. The silence was his reward. At the auto shop, Jack's days hummed with purpose. He tuned a motorcycle for a client, swapping stories about coastal road trips, while Nate grilled ribs on a portable smoker out back. During a break, Nate clapped Jack's shoulder. "You look like you're breathing again," he said, passing him a plate. Jack nodded, savoring the tang of barbecue sauce. "Feels like I own my time now." Elena, the carpenter he'd met at the hardware store, became a steady presence. They'd finished the dining table, sanding it smooth in her workshop, and now collaborated on a patio bench for his new place. She showed up with a level and a bag of screws, insisting they split the materials cost down the middle. "No debts, just work," she said, hammering a nail with precision. Jack admired her clarity, partnership without strings, a stark contrast to Sophia's calculated trades. One Sunday, Jack hosted Nate and his wife, Carla, at the bungalow. The grill sizzled with burgers, and Carla's laughter echoed as Max stole a bun from the table. Nate raised a beer. "To new chapters," he said. Jack clinked his bottle, the toast sealing his resolve. Later, Elena joined, bringing a cherry pie she'd baked. They sat on the half-finished patio, planning a bookshelf for Jack's living room. When Elena brushed sawdust off her hands and offered to grab lumber the next day, Jack said, "We'll go together. Equal split." She grinned, nodding. "Deal." Weeks later, Mrs. Lopez called, her voice warm but cautious. "Sophia's telling folks you broke her heart," she said. Jack chuckled, tightening a bolt on his workbench. "She broke her own game. I just stopped playing." Mrs. Lopez hummed approval. "You're a good man, Jack. Stay that way." That evening, Jack walked Max along the Key Biscayne shore, the waves lapping under a pink sunset. His phone stayed quiet, no texts, no demands. He thought of Sophia's final plea, her attempt to frame their past as a shared dream. But dreams built on control were just traps. Jack had chosen freedom, not out of spite, but because respect wasn't negotiable. He tossed Max's ball, watching it arc against the sky. The life he'd built, honest, steady, his, was enough.